integral part of your life. It's like an everyday thing. See the professor too, that's crazy. I'm here to explain why social media is really so addicting, things that can happen with continued heavy use, and reasons to maybe not be so into it. Well, not so much anyway. So 40 million is the number of documented cases of adults in the United States that suffer from anxiety of some degree. That is 19.1% of our population. National Institution of Mental Health estimates that 31.1% of adults have experienced an anxiety disorder of some sort to some degree. And that number is about 32% for adolescents as well, and that grows by the year. So handfuls of studies have been done correlating the rising use of social media with the rise of anxiety disorders, loneliness, paranoia, problems with mental functions, ADHD, and all that stuff. We'll get into that later. An overwhelming number of young adults with social media accounts are unable to go more than 3 hours without checking it, and a further 30% check their socials more than 15 hours a week, which sounds reasonable if you think, not reasonable, but sounds like all of us. So how does social media have this effect? 2015, a research team from UCLA linked social media with 3 natural processes of the brain, mentalizing, self-referencing, and reward networks. So mentalizing is the first one we'll talk about. That refers to the tendency for the brain to focus on others around us and see the world through a social lens. The process is carried out by the dorsal-medial prefrontal cortex. It takes forever to pronounce. But that engages social interaction, creates empathy, and helps to create judgment. These judgments have been vital in the past, like this man has a spear and he will throw his spear at me. So it's helped us through evolution. But any activity that engages this part of the brain is perceived as being important and thus non-optional, which could be a reason why social media is so addicting. We are also prone to self-referencing. Humans devote about 30 to 40% of their speech talking about themselves, and that number doubles to about 80% of social media posts. And that's because of the ability to readily gain self-approval from others, from something that's just so easily seen in our hands. But perhaps the biggest reason the brain becomes addicted to social media is because of how it engages the reward network. Now, social rewards are present, such as approval and recognition, but it really boils down to 2 chemicals in the brain, dopamine and oxytocin. So dopamine is understood to be the one that creates want, the part that creates want. It's stimulated by small bits of information, unpredictability, and reward cues, all of which are present in social media in small bursts that are consistent that make our brain want more and more. Even more compelling, social media engagement causes a steady release of oxytocin, and that release can raise the oxytocin levels in our brains to up to 13%, which is the same spike we get when we get married to someone we love. So although it didn't begin this way, much of these reactions are not capitalized by social media companies just to make more money. The attention economy is a relatively new term, and it describes the supply and demand of a person's attention, which is the commodity of the internet. The business model is really simple. The more attention a platform can pull, the more sought out their ad space is, which means more money for the company. But because attention is a human state and not a resource, our reserves are extremely limited. Companies know that ideally we want to invest in something that makes us happy. And as Facebook studies have observed, social feedback induces a burst of happiness so brief it's addictive, causing us to continue to come back and to scroll further. Adam Alter, the author of Irresistible, explains that the like button, simple as it was, tapped into a bottomless font of social feedback. And aside from the like feature, there's also other new, questionably ethical ways that companies exploit our social validation need. One is intermittent variable rewards, and that's the one you'll hear most likely when you hear other people talk about addictivity of social media. It's similar to a slot machine, how you pull a lever to see if you've won. Refreshing Facebook updates or swiping right on Tinder all kind of have that illusion of chance, and because we all love to win, we continue to come back. Some others are harder to spot, like the few moments it takes to load updates on Instagram or Twitter when you first pull up the app. Those are placed intentionally, not the app buffering, because the expectation is part of what makes it so addictive. Without that 3-second delay, we wouldn't wonder if we've won because we would already know. Social reciprocity is also another human quality that's involved. Facebook exploits this, and other places exploit it too, by alerting you when someone has read your message, meaning you want to respond to it because they've already read it. And the same part of the brain gets a rush when you see those little wavy dots when you're waiting for somebody to reply, because you are a lot less likely to leave the app if you see that someone's writing, or you're at the very least guaranteed to return. So the question of ethics in terms of the industry would take ages to get into. There's plenty more to talk about, but I don't have time. But their effects are undisputed and underreported. There are plenty of unpleasant side effects that come with this. So social media is designed to use only a piece of your attention at a time, multiple times a day. And there's a growing amount of research showing that spending large portions of your day with a fragmented attention can actually permanently reduce your capacity for concentration in the future. There's also multiple studies all concluding that the more you use social media, the more likely you are to feel isolation and loneliness. And this kind of has to do with FOMO, which is the feeling of missing out. That is from viewing curated content of positivity and success that others that you follow have, forgetting the fact that everyone goes through things and we just don't post the negative things that we go through. So their lives might seem perfect, but so might yours on your Instagram page or your Twitter. There's also a cognitive mismatch with this sort of behavior, as stated by Dr. Cal Newport in his 2016 TED Talk. Returning to the slot machine example, it's one thing to go to Vegas and play on the slot machines for a couple hours, but it's another thing to bring that slot machine with you everywhere you go and continue to use it over and over again. That actually short wires the brain, and too many rewards can actually cause a background hum of anxiety, especially if these rewards are intangible and not actually beneficial out in the real world. So what can we do? How do we plug back into the real world? There's two options. One would be to quit social media entirely, which is a whole thing. People who have removed themselves from social media completely have documented symptoms of withdrawal, similar to detoxing from any addiction, smoking, an alcoholic maybe drinking, things like that. Afterwards, though, they found their productivity to increase immensely because those 5-minute intervals can actually be used for other things, or they can be combined through one task to concentrate on that one task more intensely. They also found peace in books and radio, and the lack of stimuli actually proved to be a sense of calm to them. But the more realistic reaction or option is option 2, which is to severely lessen your time and understand what social media actually is. Treat social media as an app on your phone rather than an essential everyday task. It can feel like a whole different world, but the apps are exactly what that is. It's an application on your phone that's a fun distraction and kind of a slot machine of rewards. Instead, be present whenever possible. The people around you won't be around forever, and don't miss out on valuable time to look at a rectangular piece of metal and glass. How many times have you been to a concert and recorded the video while you were at the concert instead of actually looking at the stage, and never looked at those videos ever again? Memories last a lot longer when lived rather than recorded. So I'll end with this. One of the most devastating truths of social media is that it's an inspiration for things that we want to have, people we want to be, lives we want to live, but it becomes an obsession to see the images rather than reach for them ourselves. And we get discouraged and settle with just wishing that they were part of our lives. And we all go through different things, but we go through things and try to avoid posting those negative things. So it just makes it a lot harder to see what other people are actually dealing with in their lives, as well as yourself. And we do that to prevent ruining the image of a happy life. And that obsession takes away from time that we could use to actually devote to being happy and finding happiness in our lives. So the next time you find yourself bored for 10 minutes, instead of scrolling on Instagram, use those 10 minutes to look around at the things people actually take pictures of, because the trees are more beautiful in person. That's it.
9 minutes, 25 seconds.
9?
9.
Jesus Christ, I'm sorry, you guys.
9.
Too much information.
9.